elements of marketing that every business needs to be having in their daily practice. And what we want at the end of the day is for, yes, the theory is good and all of that, but to be able to apply these essential tools and tips and best practices in your various businesses to enhance the growth and development of your revenues and brands in the market. And so let's go. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, I have basically put together 10 essential tips that I think these are areas that are very critical to the survival of businesses, very critical from a marketing perspective to have all the necessary elements in place for your businesses to thrive. There are a whole host of other elements that are essential, but I believe that these 10 tips is a good place to start. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about how to develop your story and why your story is important, research, layers of the product and its life cycle, your unique selling proposition, identifying and being able to articulate who your target market is, brand identity, supply chain tactics, what your marketing kit should entail, and at the end, we will talk about some business to business strategies and how we engage with buyers. So let's begin. What's your story? Now, the element of storytelling in business is quite a trending notion at this time, but I want to start by saying that it's far more intense than just being able to tell a really good, compelling story and to appeal to the emotions of your clients, your customers. It's far more than that. Telling your story helps the consumer to identify your why you are in business, why your products are on the shelf, why you're offering your particular services, if you're in services, why your business exists. And that story helps the clients and the customers to understand who you are and to get some insights beyond just a transactional arrangement and a transactional relationship. One of the key elements to business survival is your ability to engage with customers and consumers. And I make the distinction between customers and consumers because consumers are the ultimate persons who will be using your products, the persons who are literally consuming it, whether it is mentally, physically, ingesting it, whatever the product is, the consumer is the person who ultimately consumes the product. But the customer is the person who is making the purchasing decision. And those two persons are not always the same. So it's important for you to make that distinction and be able to understand who is the customer, who is the consumer. In telling your story, there are some key elements that I have picked out that I believe should be a part of your story. And each slide that we do, I'm going to challenge participants to write the activities down and to put yourself in motion to start implementing these tools. Very critical that you move from the dialogue that we'll be having today into action. So the first element of the story is your values. Why were you compelled to start a business? What do you stand for? What does your business stand for? The business is a personality in and of its own. And so what does the business stand for? What are your goals? How did you develop? How did you evolve as a business, as an entrepreneur? What is the history? What were the influences that are infused in the business that now exists? How does the story influence the brand? And we'll talk a little later about the brand and the importance of that. What are the characteristics of the business? How are you going to be engaging with the marketplace? Why should the market be interested in your story? How are you going to inspire them? How are you going to use that story to motivate the market and to motivate the persons you're trying to impact with your product? How are you going to break through the noise? Because everybody will have a story. And so therefore, it's important for your story to be very genuine, very honest, very vivid, so that it can break through the noise of all the other stories that are being told by other entrepreneurs. And so one of the first things that I'll be challenging you to do is, we are very good storytellers in Jamaica. However, the ability to tell that story in 10 words and in less than 3 minutes is perhaps the key goal that you want to go after here. How are you going to, when you go to a networking session and you introduce yourself and your business, how are you going to introduce that business? What are you going to say? How are you going to connect with the persons that you're engaging with? And what is so compelling about your story? How is that story infused in the way you deliver your products? How is that story infused in the way you make your products? So one of the things you want to be able to do is to, in that short space of time, give insight into who you are as a business, right? Now, the need to tell a story is critical to the fact that the consumer, the customers, the market is going to be the deciding force as to whether or not your business survives or not. Without a purchaser, there is no revenue. So the story is really a form or method of being able to start to bond and create that relationship. There is going to be that person in the marketplace that will connect to that story. And through that connection, that's how you start building your clientele, right? So that's the first essential thing. You don't, if you have a story, but you haven't written it down, you haven't found a way to make it concise and compelling, then that's going to be your first step, your first activity. Think about all the things that went into inspiring you to become an entrepreneur and identify the key points that will make that story compelling, and then tell it. Second essential, research. Research and more research. And yes, research is a it can get very technical, but it can also be very simple. You can look at research as a way of getting to know your target market, as the way to get to understand your consumers, your customers, help you to understand how are they motivated, how can you position yourself to be able for them to be able to identify you. Think of research as getting to know your customers. And in that getting to know you process, there are several different persons that you need to get to know, right? So you have identified a problem. That's the first thing. What is happening in the marketplace? What are people complaining about? What do they need? What is missing? What is there? How is that not satisfying their needs? And you have identified a solution to solving that problem in the form of either a product or service. In that idea generation phase, you're going to need to look at what are some of the key elements involved in creating that product. So your research process starts now by looking at the idea that you've created and what will have to go into making that product a reality. What are some of the raw materials that you will need? You know, how are you going to reproduce this product? How many persons are out there that will want to buy this product? That's your target market. Now, whenever we ask clients, typically, can you define your target market? You start seeing so many different types of persons that will want to buy your product. However, there is a difference between persons who are willing or perhaps interested in buying your product and persons who you are targeting to buy the product. And so that target allows you to determine so many things about the product. By identifying who your target market is, let's talk about the size of the target market. That will give you an idea of how much revenues you may be able to generate from this business. A number of persons tell you, boy, I can't find information about the size. It's there. It's there even more now with the advent of the internet and the data. The data that is available is unbelievable. At the tick of a keyboard, you can Google, and it starts shooting out all these types of information. So start by identifying what is the size of the market. One of the things I'm paying a lot of attention to now in my own research process is the different responses to the COVID crisis and the types of products that consumers are typically seeking to buy. And we know that mask is one of those discussions. So what is the size of the market that will want to purchase your mask if you decided that you were going to buy a mask? How sustainable is it going to be? How long will they need masks? Is this going to be a limited production run for a time such as this, given the nature of what is taking place and the problems that exist now? Is it going to be sustained? So are we going to be wearing masks moving forward? How many different types of persons will be wearing masks? What is sizes? Are they male, female? All these little things are very important in determining how you're going to make the product. Now, notice I haven't said that you've made the product yet. I've identified the kinds of products I want to make. I've identified the inputs that will be required for the product. I'm also now looking at my market, because now I have to analyze this market to determine how I'm going to position the product so that that market will want to buy it. Now, in today's marketing world, there was a time in the past that we would break down that target market in what we call demographics: the size, the gender, the age, and all of those things. Income, what's their take-home income, what typically they would be willing to pay for a product. However, they have now combined all these elements, and they are calling that the buying behavior of the target market. You need to be able to profile your clients, your customers, your potential customers. If I were to ask you, who is your target market? Describe that person. Describe the way they will go into a store to buy your product, or into a business to get access to your services. Describe that person. What are the characteristics or typical characteristics of that person? And then you will start to be able to now get to a place where you are literally visualizing the target market. Now your research process starts there. Having identified a typical profile of the client, you need to now engage them. Engaging them can be simply by, if it's a supermarket type product, literally going into the supermarket and just observing how buyers interact with similar solutions, not necessarily similar products, but similar solutions. So if it's sauces, how do customers interact with the sauce, the shelf that has the sauces? Which height is typically the one that they reach for first? What are they responding to? What are the elements of the packaging solution that is appealing to them? What are the things in the ingredients that is challenging now the competitors to step up and change their products? This is a level of integration and engagement that you need to have with your target market before you actually start making the products and developing the services. Now, if you're already producing, it's not too late, because you still need to understand how persons are responding to your product versus others. So you need to be able to go into the particular places that they'll typically shop, go into there and talk to them. Internet, social media, that's one key place that you can do that right now. This is something that you can go back to your businesses, sit and start implementing right now. Send out what they call a poll of some sorts, or some kind of question. Don't bombard them too much. Look at what are some of the question signs you currently have with the products that you have in your product line now, some things that you may not understand, or how customers may be viewing those products, and ask them one question at a time. Engage the social media platform, ask them questions, get them involved in the development process, because when they become involved in the development process, then the insight that you gain from them will be infused in the products that you're creating and improving. And then the customers will say, well, they listened, and so therefore I will support this product. And that's typically how they behave. So your research process can be as simple as just observation. It can be interactive, asking questions. It can get as technical as now doing surveys and things of that nature, depending on the type of information that you want. If you want to just kind of understand how many products are out there similar to yours, your competitor landscape. Now, doing research about your competitors is not necessarily in a bid to run jostle the market and to get the customers away from them or anything like that. One thing you can look at your competitors or potential competitors and try to identify is, how are they doing it? How are they engaging with their customers? How are customers responding to their products versus mine? Or if I don't have a product out there yet, what is it that this product that's on the shelf already does not have that I can infuse in my product to get my unique competitive advantage? Because at the end of the day, your research is trying to identify a way to compete in the marketplace that will get customers to look at your product versus the other. One of the things you must ask yourself in your research bid is, why should a customer buy your product? Then, why should a customer buy my product versus my competitor's option? Now, notice I'm saying option because it may not be the same product, but it can be a product that offers the same solution to the one you are trying to provide. So your competitor analysis is one of understanding the relationship that customers are having with your competitors' products versus the relationship they're either going to have with yours or the relationship they're having with yours. So that's another key area of research that you need to be doing on an ongoing basis. Don't get complacent. Just, you must be able to have a sense of what the competitive landscape is right now. I have a product in the market. There are approximately 10 other competitors with similar solutions. This is how mine stacks up against theirs. Some of that analysis will also help you to identify areas for potential collaboration. So the competitor analysis is not an adversarial exploration. It doesn't necessarily have to be one, but it can give you a lot of insight, especially if you don't have the product yet in the market. You can look at the potential competitors, understand what you're up against, understand the relationship customers are currently having with those products, and are these the same customers that you are going to now try to entreat to buy your product, because it's a purchasing decision. And so therefore, if an existing product is there solving the same problem that you are trying to solve, you're going to have to convince that customer to move away from the competitor's product to yours. So therefore, you have to know as much as you can find out. And that is not necessarily a complex process. I like to use observation because it gives you an unfiltered view of the way customers are interacting. When you ask questions, sometimes you have to ask the questions in indirect form. So they're not, because you know you can influence the answers if they're kind of trying to figure out what you're trying to get at. So if you're doing a sampling or a taste test, put the products in unmarked containers and ask them to give you their feedback. And then you would know what is in these containers to be able to determine, okay, this is how they view that versus that. So there are several other ways that you can research, but what are you researching? How customers are interacting in the marketplace with similar solutions that you are trying to come up against. The other area that is very, very critical for research is your supply chain. What do we mean by your supply chain? If you have a product, and remember the first thing that we did research about was the product and what are the inputs and things like that. Now, who are the persons that you're going to be getting these inputs from, and how difficult or easy is it for you to get these supplies in order to produce your product? Now, if you are not fully aware of what is available in the supply chain, then when you are ready to produce, you're acting blindly. So you go out, you make a product, you identify maybe one or two persons who have the raw materials that you need. You have now started your market sensitization, you're doing sampling and testing, and the market says, wow, I love your product. I want 1,000, where maybe you were making 10 before. How are you going to respond to that increased demand? Are you then going to be trying to get information about other suppliers at that point? No, you don't want to be caught off guard like that. So you want to be able to understand how many persons are in the space, in the ecosystem that supplies your raw materials. Which suppliers tend to be more reliable than which? Which suppliers have the most reasonable prices or payment terms that are flexible enough for you to grow with them? Establish relationships with your suppliers and your supply chain. Look at the persons who are able to influence everything regarding your product and your service delivery. So we're not just talking about the product itself and the inputs for the product, but perhaps your retailer, the person who may be selling, eventually going to be selling your products. What is happening in that retail chain? How are customers operating in that space? How is your product displayed in that retail outlet? So your entire supply chain comes together to the point where you are now delivering the product directly to the customer and the person who is going to eventually use your product. Everybody along that chain has the ability to either make or break your business. So your research and how much you understand your options, look at the availability, look at the ability to grow, where you may be doing 100 units now, and the supplier that you're using is able to provide you with the inputs that you need. They may not be necessarily at the most cost-effective price or the most efficient way of storing these raw materials. So a whole host of things you need to be identifying and knowing about your supply chain. So regardless of the fear or reservations to do research, research is critical. It is exceptionally critical. Now, another area that I wanted to point out for research is regulations. Regulations are there to protect consumers and to ensure that whatever you are offering them is at a particular standard and it's at the quality that you want it. Now, if you are not familiar with these regulations, you need to get familiar, especially for persons in agro-processing and products and services that have persons consuming things that could possibly put them at risk. So it doesn't have to be food, it could be a piece of equipment that you're making. What are the safety standards for that equipment? How are consumers going to be protected while using your product? If it's a chemical, what are the safety things that they need to know in using your products? How do they use the product to get the maximum effect? All these regulations that exist are in place to ensure that you are communicating with the customers in that way. Now, one of the things we find is in each region, each marketplace that you're going, there are different types of regulations. So you may have created your products, you would have satisfied the local regulatory requirements, but you're now thinking of going into a new market. What do you need to know about that market? What are the language barriers that may exist on your labeling that will not be sufficient for that market? What are the critical things that you need to know about that market that will either prevent it from entering, prevent it from staying, and prevent it from getting into the target market that you're going after's hands. The regulations are there for you to know, and this is definitely something, especially for persons who are contemplating export. Take your time. Take your time. If you can afford to pay and go into that marketplace for yourself, that sort of interaction in the market is one of the most cost-effective ways of growing when you're looking at exports, because going into the market yourself helps you to understand some of the market research components we spoke about earlier: the target market, the competitor, the supply chain. Now, if you're going into exports, can I use my existing supply chain to go into Europe? Is it cost effective? Do I need to now find a different supplier who is in Europe, or a different manufacturer to manufacture on my behalf? Or, there's so many things that you need to know. But it starts with the regulations, because given the regulations, then it starts to indicate to you what are some of the things that the Customs and Border Patrol regulators will be looking at before they grant access of your product into their marketplace. A good experience that we could share is, we know, for example, that herbs and other medicinal type products, it's a big thing now. The health market and wellness market is a huge industry, very profitable. However, it's one of the most highly regulated for good and bad reasons. I won't get into some of that. But we do know that quite a number of these herbs and spices are already being used in pharmaceutical drugs and medications, right? But we have a market that says they want it from the soil. No, so there's high demand, target market wants it, it's solving a problem. There are a number of persons wanting to go into it, so you have a number of competitors, and the material is readily available here. However, what format are you going to put the product in so that you can export it or sell it? Can I sell the herb, the leaf? Can it survive moving from Jamaica to Spain? So perhaps now I need to look at dehydration. Maybe now I need to look at ideal packaging solutions that will sustain the quality of the herb. So these are things that you really ought to do prior to selling your first product. But we know how it goes, right? You start, some persons start and in the middle of it, but be sure to know that the longer you take to conduct this research, the more it's going to cost you in the long run. Because whether you make those adjustments at the beginning or in the middle or at the end, you are going to have to still satisfy all the requirements that the market is demanding of your products and services. And this goes for services as well. So regulations would look at things like licensing. So if you're a plumber, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, you can be a doctor in Jamaica, but perhaps cannot practice in France or US. What are some of the regulatory requirements for me now to move my service into another country? What are some of the licensing and things of that nature that I need to do? What are the qualifications that they will recognize? Doesn't mean that you don't have a good product or service. It just means that this is what the market is demanding from a regulatory standpoint. So for me, those 5 elements are key research areas. Research your product, research all the different types of inputs that are required for your product, research the technical processes of making your product. So I can make it this way, that way, that way. Okay, let me examine what is my capability, which one is more suitable for my environment. All of these things are critical research components. So I suggest that we start embracing research. Get the technocrats if it's a very technical piece of information that you're trying to identify or trying to find, but look at it for yourself. Get your team members, your staff, get everybody on board in engaging in the research process. What do you want to know? And continue that process throughout the entire lifetime of your business. So that's my second essential marketing tip. The third area that I want to look at is the product itself. Now, we talked about having a problem and solving a problem. And if I could, okay, so let's go back to the mask. So the core product is the mask itself, the thing that you're going to take and put over your face to protect you, given what the authorities and the health professionals are saying. Now, the first thing we would identify is that there are different types of masks, right? They all have the same intention, which is to protect. However, given the nature of the type of protection and how dramatic you want or effective you want that product to be, the core product will be different. But that's the product. Then the expectation of the persons buying the product is that when I put on this mask, it will do the basic things. So we know now that the fabric masks do not offer the level of protection that the more technical product masks do. So if it's just to go from here to there, then I can use this mask. So that's the expected result of using the mask. But I know that I can't go in as maybe a health professional or a surgeon using the fabric mask. So I will need to use a more technical mask. So there are certain expectations. If I buy bread, I expect the bread to be edible. If I buy jam, I expect it to be delicious, right? So there's an expectation. Now the augmented product is where you can get really creative and where you can get your competitive advantage from. So you have decided that you're going to make jams. There are approximately 100 or maybe 1,000 brands of jams in the market. You have decided to do June plum, so maybe we have reduced it to 50 brands of June plum jam. But what is special about yours is the augmented. So is it going to come with a recipe attached to the label? Is it going to come with a spoon or something that's, attached to the packaging solution? Does the packaging solution be reused? The augmented product is where you get to add things to the core benefit. Am I going to give warranties for my pieces of equipment that I'm selling, or selling a car? I offer the customers a 1-year warranty as a way of assuring the customer that I stand by the quality of my core product. The augmented product is where you get to look at the service delivery and the add-on features. So we talk about phones. There are 100 different types of phones. What is compelling me to buy an iPhone versus a Samsung or vice versa? These are some of the areas of the product that you need to look at. Don't just look at, okay, I have created this magnificent dress and it's the right fit and everything, and I carry it and I deliver it to my retailer, the boutique, and I'm done. No. Is the retailer or yourself willing to do what they call fittings, to do adjustments in case it's not fitting me right? Are you willing to customize it or fashion it in a particular way for me? Is that something you're willing to add on to your core product to offer to your clients and your customers? So in looking at the product itself, we're not just looking at the original core benefit or the problem that you want to solve. As you make that product, you're going to be able to identify additional problems that you can solve by adding on other features to the core product. So that's one area of the product that you want to really explore. Don't just look at that one product that you're making. Look at everything, the packaging, the services that go with it, the experience that the customer will have when they are consuming your product. And that's the entire product. What are the potential things now that you can now add on over time to enhance the revenue potential of that core product? The other thing you want to pay attention to is the product life cycle. Now, a product life cycle, the market determines your product life cycle. It's not about, when I look at Milo, for example, I think Milo may have been created before I was born, and I'm not very young, but Milo still exists. I still go into the cupboard and pull the Milo and mix it with the milk to make sure that the grains come to the top and all of that. I'm still doing that. How is it possible for a product to last so long on the market? It's all about how the market perceives the product and what benefits they derive from the product and how loyal they are to using that product. Now, we hear now that consumers are fickle. Not necessarily that they are fickle, but they are looking for value. And if your product is not able to offer them value when compared to another, then they are going to shift their loyalties. And it's going to now determine your product, how long your product will live for. So the investment that you're making in the products now, think about the longevity of that product and how long will you be able to keep it in the marketplace? How quickly will you have to innovate to keep it current and to keep it offering value? Yeah. Now, when you look at certain types of products, then certain types of products have certain types of life. Services, we will always want to go to the doctor, but what exactly are you going to be offering to extend the life so that I'm coming to you even when I'm old and gray? What is going to be that compelling influence to keep the product in the market for a long period of time? This is where, as entrepreneurs, you have to be extremely flexible. And we go back to the marketing essential of research, because it is a research that triggers you to understand that, oh dear, I am now in the mature phase of my products. I'm starting to see a decline in revenues, a decline in the number of units sold. Why? Go and find out why. Oh, there's a new option on the market that puts it in a Tetra Pak. Oh, now Milo is doing Tetra Pak. But they have managed to maintain the original product, but they have now added on Tetra Pak to gain back that market share that they may have lost to persons who probably found Tetra Pak more convenient. So your ability to be agile and to respond, remember, the customer is king. So your product, your service, your business must be responding to the customer's need. It is customer-led. And that product that you're offering is surrounded by a number of things that will impact. So these are some things I want you to write down that you will need to look at when you're evaluating your product life cycle. Market research, test marketing, revenues, units sold in particular, because if you're changing prices and your units are consistent, then it will, that increase in revenue might disguise what's happening with the number of units being sold. When you start to see fluctuations, and we know fluctuations can be seasonal and all of that, but when you start to see particular fluctuations in the number of units sold, it is a trigger to say, let me go and find out if persons are now no longer interested in this product, or I am losing ground on this product. What do I need to do to now respond to the persons I have lost, and what do I need to innovate to recapture them? Especially if there are, there's a certain amount of brand loyalty. So understand, is my product at the growth phase? Is it at the introductory phase? And the product, your product, is not in isolation of the products on the market. So sauces have been there from time immemorial. You are now putting a new sauce in the market. It's not a new product. However, perhaps you have put a plant-based, so it's vegetarian, for example. So is that the first one on the market? Is it a new product to the market? Is it a new option to the market? So therefore, it is at the beginning phase of the product life cycle. Is it a mature product, has been in existence by other persons before, but I'm putting a different spin to it? So I'm going right into the maturity of that marketplace. How are you going to maintain the longevity of the product life cycle? Is it dying? Do I need to kill it? Do I need to innovate? Do I need to, go into something completely different because people are no longer buying? So if I were to think of something that just became obsolete in the blink of an eye, perhaps the CPU, you remember those old phones with the big things, and I mean, used to be so fancy, you put it on your hip and you were like the in thing. And then now, if you were to try to come into the marketplace with that phone, you'd be ridiculed. So that's an indication that it is a dead product, something that needs to be reinvented, and look again at what you were originally intending for the product. What problem were you intending to solve? Is the problem no longer there, hence your product no longer relevant? So those are some things you need to look at where the product life cycle is concerned. Another key essential marketing tool is your ability to have a unique selling proposition, especially when you're going into a marketplace that has alternatives to your product. Again, why should I buy your product? What do you have to tell me that's going to convince me that I should buy yours versus another? One way to look at it cannot be price, because price is so easy for other persons to respond to. And perhaps I'm fickle where pricing is concerned. Maybe I don't buy because of price, but I buy because of value. And so therefore, I need to be able to identify why I should buy yours. And one of the ways you can create a unique selling proposition is through the features of your product. And those features, as we had discussed with how the product is made up, is not necessarily directly tied to that core product. Those features can be services or benefits that you offer in conjunction with the product itself. So look at the product features and see if you can identify that something that is unique that nobody else is offering, or even if someone else is offering it, they can't offer it enough to satisfy the demand. So you are now positioning yourself as an alternative source, or features that allow persons to be able to get a benefit that they will not be able to get from any other product. Look at your product features and see if you can identify unique selling cues in there that you will then take and use in your promotional strategies. Now, I find it ironic that we're talking about marketing, and we're talking about marketing essentials, but notice I have not spoken anything about advertising and promotions, which is typically where we go when we hear the word marketing. We have spoken a lot about product, the benefits, and things of that nature. And so what I want to point out to you is that marketing takes into consideration ultimately the customer's experience. How are you now? So after you've identified your product features, are you going to convince me by telling me what these features are? Maybe not, because maybe I don't even understand why these features are so important. So the phone lights up in the night. Why is that important? I don't know. I can lock my phone or unlock my phone with my thumb. Why is that feature important? What you communicate to the market are the benefits of those features. It's important for you to convert those features into benefits so that I can relate to those benefits as a customer that will help me to make my purchasing decision. And then list those benefits in order of priority. I want to ensure that persons who are tuned in are going to be utilizing these tips. And so write it down. Write down all the benefits that you think your products offer. And then go back through that list and put it in order of priority. This benefit is the most important one. This one, then this one, then this one. Then look around you and see if there's anybody else offering those benefits. And if not, therein lies your unique selling proposition. Is the benefit a standard benefit or is it different? So we expect that the phone should be able to have Bluetooth connection. Is that a standard benefit or is it something new that you have offered? Every time Apple or Samsung or one of those tech companies put something out, put a new edition out, they're offering a new benefit, something that is different from the previous product that they put out. And there's a reason for that. Customers are constantly seeking value. And so you have to be able to communicate what the benefits of your products are. And that is now where you're going to look at your labeling, your packaging, how you communicate it, your promotion strategies, your communication strategies. These are the things that you will now be able to communicate along that marketing spectrum. Do this exercise for every single product that you have in your product range. And if you have a situation now where businesses are in crisis, they have to be making some tough decisions. What products do I put on pause? What products do I continue producing? These are some of the types of questions that you will be able to answer when you are able to do this, because you have now prioritized and you have now identified which ones you need to focus on, which benefits are customers responding to most, and ensure that that is evident in your communication strategies. Do it for every single product, and then be able to identify which products are your cash cows, which products perhaps have more potential but maybe need to be redeveloped or improved to improve your value proposition, and what problem does that each of those products in your product line solve. What problem does each of your products solve? What's the history that you have in doing business? That's another area that you can identify your unique selling proposition. So you can say, if you are able to say, I've been in business for X amount of years, or for persons who are fashion designers who have now gone into the different types of masks and so on, then you can say, I've been a designer for X years, or I've been a seamstress for X years, and so I know how to convert into making these products. So you may be doing a new product, but your history or your experience is something that you can offer as a unique selling proposition that gives the customer some kind of guarantee that there's experience and knowledge and wisdom going into the product. Why should a buyer consider doing business with you? That's another area that you can look at when you're creating your unique selling proposition. And as we go down further, I will share with you some tips that you may need to share with your buyers, right? Number 5, we spoke about this earlier for persons who may have come on late, but the target market is a very, very critical thing for you to know. And one of the things I wanted to point out here are these points that I have here that deals with the buying rules. Now, we spoke about the difference between a customer and a consumer. When you are defining your target market, define the target market in relation to who is a customer and who is a consumer. So cereal, let's look at cereals, for example. Children, well, that's kind of like a loose statement, but children are typically the biggest consumers of cereals, especially the sugary ones. They are the consumers, but they are perhaps not the ones in the buying role. It's probably the parent, most likely. I'm sorry, men, but most likely the mothers, right? So the mothers are who you need to be communicating with, and the children as well. So there are two different elements here. One, in my target market analysis, I'm looking at who I need to influence to eat my cereal. And then I have another set of persons that I need to influence to buy the cereal for the persons that need to consume it. So those are what we talk about when we're talking about the buying rules. There's a buyer and there's a consumer. Are they one and the same? Are they different? What do I need to know about each of them? What channels are the most ideal channels given my target market? So do I need to go into a health food store? Do I need to go into Kingston or Montego Bay because the target market is predominant in Montego Bay? Do I need to go near the shoreline because it's closer to my supply chain? The channels through which you get the product to your target market is something you want to be able to know. What is the customer's buying journey? So I go in, I'm introduced to your product or service. I have something that's going on inside my head that is going to influence me to buy your product. You have explained your unique selling proposition. Your products are ideally outlined. I know what the concept is. What is the next thing that needs to happen for me to now go and take my money and purchase your product? This is a journey that every customer goes through in deciding to buy your product. Do you know what this journey is? Do you know what they go through? Do you know the process from where they have determined that perhaps they may want your product to the point of taking their money and buying it? Is that where the journey ends? No. After buying the product, what is my experience in consuming the product? How do I get it back? What makes me want to come back and buy it? What is that journey looking like for your customers? This is something that you need to know because, as I said, they are the ones that determine the success of your business. So you need to know, right? Branding. Now, branding is a very special thing. It's something that defies the greatest of products that have been created have failed. Why? Perhaps it is identity. Can the consumer identify with your product? Now, why is a brand important? And what is the brand? And what do we determine should be our brand? Imagine myself here presenting to you. So I'm Janine. When I was being introduced, somebody was able to say, this is Janine, she's so-and-so, and this is what she's here to do today. It's a way of identifying who I am. Without a brand, people cannot identify who you are. Now, when you create that brand, what are they saying? What is your brand saying? What is the brand name saying? Does it have a meaning? Is it obscure? If it's obscure, what does it mean? How do I identify it? The branding is key. What does it look like? What's the color? What's the complexion? So when you start to describe me, you're trying to introduce me to someone. You're going to say, well, her name is Janine. She's of whatever complexion, with whatever eyes. She has locks, and you are able to describe, this is what she stands for. These are the values that she has. This is who she is. It's the same thing for the product. What does your product stand for? What is it saying? When it goes into the marketplace, what's the identity? That's your branding. That's how you look at branding. It is not how pretty, it is not, it's a little bit of that, but it's far more compelling than just how good it looks or how loud you can say it. It's about what does it stand for. This brand is what is going to determine the position you take in the marketplace. And so it is not something that should be taken lightly. It is not something that you should quickly, run to register. This is something that you have to think about. Think about the product life cycle that we spoke about. Imagine if Milo had called it something else that had a very fixed structure. So it could now transcend into energy drink because it called itself sweet tea. You know, if that was the brand that Milo had assigned to it and called itself sweet tea, then it could not pivot and call itself energy drink later. It would have to rebrand. So the term or the name that you give to that brand has to be something that can grow with the business, can pivot, can switch, can turn, and is easily identifiable and able to be recognized by your consumers in the market. It's all about how consumers perceive your brand and how you can influence them to buy your product. Even if your product is not the best one, what does your brand offer with it? What does it stand for? Can I am I able to recall who you are? So I'm introduced as Janine. When we are finished with this webinar, will you be able to recall my name, Janine? So it must be something that I can say. I mean, I saw some memes going around with persons trying to pronounce coronavirus or COVID. So these are some of the things you may want to look into. Pay attention to how people react to certain types of brands and why they react to it. Build brand loyalty. So having established the brand, build brand loyalty. How do you do that? By getting consumers involved, by looking at the way they perceive value that you offer. Can they trust you? What do you stand for? Are they satisfied with what they get when they purchase your brands? Are they coming back to buy your products? And one of the things, the key things you need to be able to track in your businesses are how many customers. So having identified and gotten a customer, are you able to keep them? Are they coming back to purchase? Why didn't they come back? These are some of the reasons why we ask customers, is this your first time shopping with us? How did you hear about us? When you're finished with the transaction, ask them, what was your experience like? Did you enjoy your shopping experience? Would you come back? Don't be offended if they say no. Ask them why. How could we improve our service? This is what we mean when we say you have to be engaging with your market and being able to understand how effective your brands are. You have to be able to ask these questions, and you have to be willing to do the kind of research and investment in your brands so that it can live, it can sustain the life of your business. Yeah. So that's what we talk about branding. It's a very complex subject matter. It's not something that we'll be able to do in a webinar for a few hours or so, but just to pay attention to the process of creating your brand, review it, ask the questions that we've said, and then make the decisions about what you're going to be registering. So once you have done all the in-depth work in determining those brands, then protect it. Imagine going into a room with 10 persons named Janine and not being able to identify that this I, Janine Taylor, versus all the other Janines, or some other Janine did something and I get blamed for it because we have the same name. Just think about your brand as in that kind of way. It's similar to your name. And if you can remember that, then put the effort and the energy and the skills behind creating those brands with that special ingredient, right? Number 7, we're going to break down the supply chain into 5 key areas that you need to know about your suppliers. You need to know all the raw materials that are required for your production, but you also need to know substitutes if there are any. Without substitutes, when there is something that is going wrong with a particular raw material, then it means that something will go wrong with your product. And you want to be able to mitigate against the risk of that. So look for alternative raw material sources. Look at your packaging material. How strong is it? Can it withstand movement from point A to point B? What are some of the considerations you need to take into note for those packaging materials? Who are the stakeholders involved in creating your products and services? So the staff, it's important for your team to be fully aware of the product knowledge and what you are offering. Your processes need to be clear. Who are your partners? Who do you team up with to get things done? How are you going to deliver the product to your marketplace? These are all factors that impact the ultimate customer experience. And so therefore you want to definitely know what is taking place where that is concerned. Okay. Moving on to tactics. So we have the product, we have everything ready, we're going to market now. What are some of the things that I need to consider? What are your goals? How many units do you want to sell in the first month? How many units do you want to sell in your 20th year of operation? How are you going to improve your revenue next year? What's your customer discovery strategy? How are you going to discover your customers? How are you going to keep them? Where are they? What's your go-to-market strategy? So these are some areas that you want to work out your tactics. You want to have a kind of brainstorming session with your team and get some ideas. What is my go-to-market strategy? Which market am I going to go after first? How long before I can evaluate if I'm effective? What do I need to adjust? If this market isn't working out, which one is better to go after now? What are some of the networks that I need to connect with to ensure that I am stable in the marketplace? So what are the networks that influence my business? So it's you may not want to do the networking thing, but it is necessary for the survival of your business. You need to know people and people need to know you. Who are the key players? Now when you go into that arrangement, what benefit or what value do you bring to the network and what can you extract from the network? So it's a reciprocal relationship. Look at innovative ways to do your marketing tactics. It's not always necessary for you to spend billions or millions or thousands, depending on the size of the business. It's not always necessary for you to throw money at marketing. It's never necessary for you to throw money at marketing, but sometimes you do have to spend a decent budget. But there are some really simple ways of getting to the market, one of them being word of mouth. Now, if one customer is satisfied, the likelihood of that customer telling another person is that they're satisfied is high. And that's the most effective way to establish yourself in the market. When a customer says, yes, this product is the best product I've had, you don't need to spend any marketing on that. All you need to do is manage your relationship with that customer and ensuring that every single time the customer interacts with your product, they're experiencing either the same thing or more each time, and continue to ensure that that relationship is built and that experience is at the highest standard, and perhaps you can spend less money on the advertising budget, or perhaps you may need to do less trade events because you're getting so much business just by being nice to your customers. Yeah, so look at the more inexpensive ways of doing marketing before you get into the big dollar items. Now every company needs to have a marketing kit, and surprisingly, this is an area that we find persons are not necessarily paying a lot of attention to. So when they get, when they go out and they are exposed and they get positive feedback from the market, they are now running, scrambling to get this information. These are standard things that you must have in your toolkit. A business card. Sounds simple? but many of us don't have it ready when asked for one. Have a business card. So once you're going into the market, have your business cards ready. Whether it is digital now, you can do it on the phone and scan it and barcode it and all sorts of fancy things. Doesn't matter, just have it. What should be on the business card? Your business name, an email address, the most ideal person to contact. If that is not you, do not put your name there. Put the person that the customer will get when they call. And what are some of the social media platforms that they can interact with you on, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and ensure that your business card has that information. What else should you have in your marketing kit? An order form. So I come, I interact, I see your product, I love it, I'm ready to order. I just want something to just fill out. Give me 20, and you have the unit price there, ready and waiting. A profile of your business. First thing we spoke about, the story. Very succinct, very short. Give me a sense of who you are. So you must have that ready. In the blink of an eye, maybe the gleaner or the observer may call you and say, give me a business profile. You don't want to be spending 2 and 3 days trying to figure out what to write. You want to have that ready. For promotional purposes, especially if you're doing trade events and promotions externally, you want to have your discount coupons and your information flyer where applicable. That's not a critical thing, but you know, if you have something of value to offer, be sure to have that. Price list. One of the most distracting things that can happen in a negotiation is not having a price list and asking and saying to them how much you want. No. Have your price list, and your price list must be broken down into, you know, how much do I pay if I buy 1, how much do I pay if I buy 10, if I buy 100, if that is applicable. Depending on how intense the relationship that you're trying to establish is, you may want to have a testimonial or 2 from other customers. And those are some stuff that you want to post in your social media pages and stuff like that. People talking about what their experience was consuming your product. And it has to be honest and real, because customers tend to see when you're not necessarily being open and honest, right? So you get your testimonials, ensure that these customers are willing to share what their experience was with your product, and have that ready to share. If somebody were to say, can I get a referral or a recommendation, you are able to say, okay, I'm going to use these 5 customers when asked for recommendations. Have a range of products where possible, with a list of the benefits or features, preferably benefits, beside each, and make sure that these are claims that you can actually say. Yeah. Also have a client list of who you're currently supplying. Once somebody makes a purchase from you, record their information and be able to get in touch with them. What are some of the packaging options? And by packaging options, what I mean is, if you have 10, is there a deal if I buy 3 of 10, if I buy it as a bundle versus buying it as one? Are you willing to customize products given what you have offered? I may like what you have, but are you willing to customize it? So these are some key things you want to have in your marketing kits. And 10, assuming now that having done all the other things that we have spoken about, you are now ready to engage with buyers. And notice I'm using the word buyers. We may not all have the opportunity to interact with our customers and consumers directly, in terms of we may not be doing commerce directly with the customer, and we may need to be going through an intermediary, whether that is a store or a body, maybe a association of some sort, or whatever that is. And so what do you do when you're going to now sit with a buyer or a potential buyer who is going to sell your product on your behalf to the consumer? These are some tips. Have a proven track record, because buyers like to know that you have had previous buyer relationships and sort of gives some insight to the stability of your ability to do commerce. It's one thing to be a producer, quite a different thing to be able to sell your products. And if that's not you and you want to stay in the lab and produce, go right on ahead and get yourself a sales rep that will do your selling for you. But be able to talk about your track record or how long your products have been on the market. If not, your track record as a specialist or someone in the field. You know, what competencies do you come to the table with when you're talking to your buyer? Is your quality of your products at the highest standard? You must be able to articulate your quality assurance regime. So you must be able to say to the buyer, we test each batch, we blah blah blah, we check the seals. This is the way we go about doing our quality checks. Buyers like to know that because they are also wary of you putting their businesses at risk by not doing the right checks. Adherence to regulations, we spoke about that. You can't go around that. Offer exceptional customer service, and it's so oversaid, but we can't say it enough. Customer experience. Fair and appropriate pricing. Fair because this is what is the most reasonable price to sell this product at. Appropriate is this is the most appropriate price to sell this product at given the context that the product is being sold at. Yeah. Interesting and relevant product services that will enhance the improvement of the buyer's revenue base. So you need to be able to say to your potential buyers, this is what I believe adding my product to your range will do to your sales. Can you guarantee that? Maybe not, but you must be able to show some kind of stats to say, every time we have put this product on the shelf, we have seen blah, blah, blah response. So you may be able to convince your buyers because you're convincing them that adding your product to their range will improve their revenue. Have a digital presence. Once you are putting a product out there, now the first thing somebody's going to do is Google you. That's a fact. Always research your prospective buyers. So know who you're talking to. When you set your appointments and your meetings, don't go in there blindly. When the buyer says, have you heard of me before? You must be able to know. Plus, it's also prudent in case, you need to do some background checks on who you're meeting with. Which products will you select to show? You may not want to show them everything. Pick your priority products that we spoke about before and have those ready. And then you can say, in addition to these, I have X more, right? Offer them to come and tour your factories and stuff like that if that's applicable. Ensure that you have alternative pricing so that when the negotiation starts and the buyer says, no, that price is too high and so on, you're not scrambling trying to come up with a price to counter offer. Always be willing to modify your product given the needs of the buyer. Maybe they want it in a smaller size or a bigger size. Be open to that kind of modification in order to get the transaction going. What are your capabilities to fulfill an order? So you may want to say, I'm currently supplying 10 other suppliers, and that takes care of 60% of my inventory, and I have room for more, right? Are you anticipate questions about your business processes and operations? Oftentimes when you are in a negotiation, you are focused on selling a product. But buyers sometimes tend to be focused on your business operation, your registration, your warehousing, they want to know everything about your internal workings. Why? Because it gives them insight into your reliability. So be willing to anticipate questions that will focus on your business processes and your operations. And what do you want to achieve from the sales meeting? So you're meeting with a buyer, perhaps you just want feedback right now. You plan to sell them in the next, you plan to sell to PriceSmart in the next year or two. So you meet with them now to get feedback from them. What would it involve if I wanted to supply you? Are you going to meet with them for awareness to get a sense from them, you know, what they're looking for, etc.? Is it interest? Is it relationship? Is it an order? Depending on what you want to achieve from that meeting, decide from early what's your goal, and then organize yourself around that goal, right? It may not necessarily be that you're meeting to get an order. And some common mistakes, just to wrap up before we get to question and answer. One of the common mistakes, rejecting or resisting negative feedback. And this can be either the buyer or it could be customers as well. You're in a trade event and customers are giving you negative feedback, having sampled your product. Do not reject it, do not resist it, ask further questions, explore more, get a sense of why they are feeling that way. Being caught up with your product instead of presenting a viable solution to add for your buyer. So don't get too caught up in, you know, my product is this, my product is that, and, you know, my product is the best thing since sliced bread, and then not be focusing on how the buyer is responding to you. You know, what is the body language like? Are they able to extract from what I've said the value of doing business with me? Maintain eye contact, listen keenly to the questions that are being asked, and answer those questions. If you're unable to answer the question, tell them you don't have the answer right now, but you will get back to them. Don't be, if you're you know, engaging in dialogue, not too much rebuttals, not too much drilling and trying to make a point. If you have to be doing so much of that, then your communication strategy is not clear and the customer has not been able to extract the value as quickly or as easily as they should. And so it usually means that something is off with the discussion. Neglecting to offer product samples and sales. Remember that buyers are meeting with potential producers every day. And so you may want to leave a product sample, that's an investment, and a sales kit that they will be able to go back to if they are now ready to purchase from you. And mishandling questions you don't know, as I said earlier. Inquire in the dialogue when you're closing the sale if the buyer has any further questions. Don't just, you know, stop talking, but ensure that the buyer has gotten all the answers that they need to their potential questions and answer those questions. And I believe that's it. So
thank you so much, Mrs. Taylor. That was an excellent, excellent, excellent presentation. I think it is always important for persons to understand that marketing is not just advertising, it's not just selling, but it is rather creating a product, true product that targets a particular audience and does the things that are necessary to get that customer's attention. So that was a very, very good presentation. And thank you so much for sharing it this morning. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Just want to remind the persons that if you want to ask a question and you have a mic that is working, you can go ahead and just click on participants on the main screen and raise your hand and you will be acknowledged. In the meantime, though, I have two questions from Roy Reynolds. And the first question, Mrs. Taylor, is, since customer is king, how do you politely engage on value and not price? He's saying that he's always haggling with customers to get the cheapest price. So he wants to know, how do you politely engage on value instead of price?
well, that could be as a result of two things. One, target marketing. ensuring that the person that you're engaging with, or if you have to haggle, it's possible that they are not the most ideal target market. So trying to convince them of that value may be an effort in futility. However, the other side of that could mean that instead of talking about the features, talk about the benefits. Ask them how much they would be willing to pay for that benefit, because you may find yourself getting trapped into getting them into your production process just to convince them of the value. And that value, usually it is more effective when the value is quickly evident to the consumer. So if they are not seeing it, something is off with the communication strategy. Perhaps the labeling isn't clear enough. Perhaps you have not eyeballed the major benefits. So remember, we talked about for the product, listing those benefits and then putting the priority benefits, putting them in an order of priority. Which one is going to be that key unique selling proposition that stands out? So those are the two things I see. Perhaps that the target market, maybe the persons you're presenting to, or the particular marketplace that you're in is not the most ideal. So you have to do far more teaching, far more sensitization about the product for them to be able to extract what the value is and then match that to price. Or allow the discussion to take place so that you can get an understanding of how the customer is perceiving. It's a matter of coming out of your head because you know the value. So it's coming out of your head and going into their head to identify how they have assessed value.
Wonderful. And then he has another question. My product is on the lower scale and will have to include the right message to C-level. How would I shorten the life cycle by having price ready during executive presentations? You understand the question that is being asked?
No, perhaps give me some more clarity. So they're on the lower level of the product cycle. So
no, lower scale. My product is not on the lower scale and will have to include the right message to C-level. How would I shorten the life cycle by having price ready during executive presentation? I'm thinking he wants to sell to his target market would be my definition of C-level would be those CEOs, general managers, that level of client, that level client group. So he wants to know how to have this product lifestyle. All right, Mr. Reynolds, just send me back a question just to clarify what you are asking right there so that we can get you the right answer. There's a question from Rani Sarju. Rani, I'm gonna unmute your mic so that you can go ahead and ask a question. Can you hear me, Rani?
Hi, good day. Janine, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
In our current circumstances, I've always thought we need to build the capacity of the manufacturing industry so we can become more self-sufficient as a country. But I have probably two questions. I have a little more, but I think I should only limit it to two. One of my challenges as a prospective manufacturer is the fact that I make a product, but I have no chemist. And a lot of the things that people will make at home or in their own kitchens, I've gotten the Food Processing Act, I've gone to Bureau of Standards, and I've gotten everything that I need to have. But the fact of the matter is that when I look at the chemical composition of some of the products, let us say a sauce, I have no way at home to check that, more than I can probably heat something and that kind of thing. How do we make up for that limitation for those of us who want to manufacture food or body products or anything that requires a chemical composition? How do we make up for that lack of chemical expertise? Because what I find is that chemists seem to exist at Scientific Research Council, Bureau of Standards at the University of the West Indies, but there isn't necessarily a cohort of people you can go to for that expertise. How do we get around that? Particularly because you're talking about quality assurance processes. How do we get around that? That's
well, okay. Well, we do have a food department with the JBDC in our technical services unit that can assist you with that. They are more able to tell you other sources as well outside of themselves that are able to help you. And then the other part of answering that is to encourage you to look at your networks. So when we talk about your network and your stakeholders, this is where now we need to get into the research process of identifying key persons that we need to have on our team, not necessarily employed to us, but accessible to us. So I don't have the names or the resources with me, but I'm sure my food department, you can contact us at our incubator resource center. They will be better able to tell you who are the persons that you can liaise with, as well as they can offer you that support themselves.
Okay, awesome. My next question is this, and I don't know, I think a lot of people might be able to relate in this platform. I do not necessarily have my own facility.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have a 9 to 5. So
Mm-hmm.
my ideal circumstance is to get up 12 o'clock in the middle of the night and make a batch of whatever I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
However, what facilities or opportunities are there for persons who want to have small scale facility options? Because the fact of the matter is that your home kitchen might not necessarily meet the standards as set out. You can do it in your home kitchen. I mean, I've read it, and our local regulations accommodate it. There might be some changes that you might have to make to your own home. But what kind of small scale facility options do you offer? What is it that JBDC offer that can say, okay, you don't have the space to work in, we can rent you this small space to operate in for an hourly rate or whatever? What kind of, facility do you have to offer that?
Well, our incubator, again, the food technology department supports that incubator. We have a facility there. It's not open to all types of products, but perhaps depending on what you are looking into manufacturing, that's something that they can help you with, as well as we have other partners that we liaise with from time to time that have what we call turnkey facilities. And the other thing that I think a number of MSME businesses fail to recognize is that we have persons along the spectrum with production facilities that are severely underutilized. And if we cluster and network effectively, we can share production spaces and share the cost of maintaining those production spaces. So again, it is a matter of finding the right persons to team you with who may have
Right.
facilities that can accommodate your product, and then your willingness to go into a sort of contractual arrangement to rent space with those facilities, or to do contract manufacturing, which is them manufacturing it on your behalf, or using an incubator such as the one that we have at our Marcus Garvey branch to get the ball started. But the thing you need to keep present in your mind when you're using an incubator type facility to get to market is that if the market responds positively to your product, you may not be able to scale quickly. So you should always be looking at establishing a facility over time, even
Right.
if you start in an incubator. But there are facilities around. It's just a matter of getting the information. I am not necessarily the best source of that information, but I'm sure my technical services team can assist you. So just give us a call.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Rani. There is a Marlene White is asking, please expand on your second subtopic research. Apart from PIOJ, where can I get general business related stats? Example, how many sauce brands are sold in Jamaica and who is the market leader?
Well, I am not sure how you would get the market leader data, except we're looking at the exporting numbers, and we can look at our customs department as a good source of that type of information to look at how much is going out. I'm certain that if they're at the top of the scale, they are exporting as well. So that's one area you can look at, the customs number. I know that from time to time, depending on the type of product and if they are labeled in our statin unit, that we can get information from statin. You can also look at trying to get your supermarkets or your retailers to provide you with information. They can't give you necessarily data that is confidential to the businesses, but they can tell you which brands are the top sellers in their particular retail establishments. These are things that persons are typically willing to share. It's not as difficult as we think it is. It's really just a matter of engaging and trying to get the information from them. Go to 5 or so supermarkets in different areas and ask the questions. Looking at the shelf yourself is something that is important, because you get to eyeball exactly what's happening on the shelf. And then looking at maybe the JMEA as another source of that information, since a majority of the manufacturers are registered with them. And in fact, we encourage our clients, once they are in production and they are in the market, to become members of the JMEA as a manufacturing body, because there now you also have another source of support. And even for the previous question, perhaps there will be members in that body that are willing to grant you production space. And so the information is there. It can look into the annual reports of some of the major firms as well. Major distribution firms and major companies, once they're listed, they have to publish their annual reports. Look at those annual reports and read the numbers, and you may be able to get some insights.
All right, fabulous. Question from Nicaro Cook. Could you reinforce or reiterate the importance of brand identity?
Okay, so I like the fact that the question was asking about brand identity. The brand is the identity, and that's the major important factor. What is that identity? How do people recognize your brand in the market space with all of that noise taking place? How are they going to be able to identify you? And so something as simple as the logo or the way the brand is designed. How am I going to respond to it? Think about the senses, the eyes, the nose, the ears, and all of that. What stimulus am I getting when I identify that brand? In the absence of the brand, I am not able to identify you. In the presence of the brand, what do you look like and how are you communicating with me? What do you stand for? So outside of what I can see, it's pretty, it's a nice logo, packaging is great, the product is high quality and all of that. What do you stand for as a company under that brand? What does the brand stand for? What are the values that are inculcated in the creation of that brand? And those values, how do they transcend in the way you do business? So if you say, I am brand X and I am always looking to satisfy your needs, are the customers experiencing that when they come into your business? And that is how the customer is then able to identify with you. When they see your brand, there's a particular emotion that it elicits, and that comes from the way they are experiencing you in that market. So I hope that answers the identity question.
All right. The question came back from Mr. Reynolds again. So he says, my sales tend to drag on in a long decision cycle. I was trying to find out how to shorten the life cycle with the correct CEO level message. So basically, when he goes in to make a sale, they take long to decide if they're going to buy the product or not. So he wants to be able to coin the right message so that he can get the sale done.
One of the key things about that is why we encourage persons to
Did you hear that, Janine?
Yes, I got it. One of the key things we need to look at is the problem that we're solving. And whether or not we have created a product and are now trying to sell the product or convince the consumer that my product is the one to solve their problem that they did not tell us they had, or they have not identified that they have. So if you see a particular trend and you identify that they may have a problem with X and you have created a product to solve that problem, but they don't see it, what you need to be convincing them about are the benefits of having your product. Now, if you're making a product and then trying to convince them to buy it, then it's going to be an uphill battle, because the first thing they have to be able to identify is the problem that your product is solving, and ask themselves if this is a problem they want to solve. And then, so they have to go through a lot of things before they get to the place where they're going to decide to buy your product. And so if they are not there as a consumer or potential customer in identifying that they have a problem, then you have basically created a product that is not, in their minds, solving their problem, and hence the need to be convincing them in that sales process. So it means, therefore, that you now have to go back and reevaluate the process of product innovation and product creation. Are we creating products and trying to sell it to customers, or are we creating solutions that customers will readily identify with our product? Hopefully that gives some insight.
Can you hear me, Janine?
Just hearing you.
All right, great. Question from Karen Burke.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my products are branded, logos at the back with the company contact information. Is it okay to start branding my products on the front? For example, wall clocks and wall art, putting my logo in center, just as a regular clock will be branded, or bottom right as a piece of art will be signed by a pen?
Well, it depends on how persons respond to it. So one of the things that I would do is that I would create some samples and have both an option where it's not and one where it is, and observe the way customers relate to it being at the front. Again, it's about research. So it's about doing the experiment, observing the way customers respond to the ones with the logo at the front versus how they respond to the logos at the back, asking them that question when they get into the interaction process, and hearing from them what appeals to them. Because for certain types of products, especially the type of products that are more in the artisanal range, a brand can be distracting. So also the way the brand is applied. And the branding is not necessarily that the branding has to be visible on the product itself. It may mean that the augmented product or the expansion of that product, so it may be a clock, but the clock is in a box, or it's in a packaging solution or a frame, and that is the branding. And so when you're doing the visual merchandising, it is in that sort of container, but the clock itself has maybe a hidden mark of some sort. So it's very product specific, and it's also specific to how people respond to it. So the branding and the identity being evident is not necessarily the same as being obvious. It can be a discrete branding type, but the packaging and the other things that you put around it may be able to help you to promote the brand. Hopefully that answers. Santa?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Not hearing you.
I'm sorry, are you hearing me now?
Yes, hearing you now.
Oh, sorry about that. All right, so thank you again, Janine. That was an excellent presentation, excellent responses as well. Just to give some contact information, I've posted in the chat where new clients who want to get in contact with us, I've posted a link where you can sign up and a business development officer will contact you. You can also send us an email at info@jbdc.net. We're also available by phone, 876-550-1167 or 876-414-3376. Of course, you can also follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. The recording for this event will be available on YouTube. So you can follow us on social media so that you will be aware of when it will be available. Again, thank you so much for being part of today's presentation. And as you know, we'll be back on Thursday for online discussion with our creatives. If you are one of our creative entrepreneurs, you are welcome to join us. The registration information for that will be sent. Have a great day, everyone.
And it was a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Bye.
All right, bye, everybody.